When Khamzat Chimaev stepped into the octagon against Dricus Du Plessis at UFC 319, many fans were unsure if he could keep up the hype that has followed him from the start of his career. But what unfolded inside that cage was nothing short of dominance. A performance so one-sided that even seasoned analysts like Daniel Cormier and Joe Rogan were left in awe. They didn't just see a fighter winning, they saw a man who seemed to operate on a completely different level. From the very first exchange, it became clear that bridging the gap between Chimaev and Du Plessis was a task far taller than most could have imagined. Du Plessis entered this fight with confidence. After all, he had gone through some of the toughest names in the division. He had proven himself against Robert Whittaker, he had overcome Sean Strickland, and he had even stood tall in a battle with Israel Adesanya. Those wins had positioned him as one of the most dangerous men at middleweight, but against Khamzat, none of that mattered. The South African powerhouse was simply dragged into deep waters that he had never truly experienced before. Rogan pointed out that this wasn't just a difference in skill, it was a difference in levels. It wasn't a slight edge, it was multiple layers of dominance stacked on top of each other. What Chimaev did so well was take control of every second. His pace was relentless, his pressure suffocating, and his cardio unmatched. He didn't just rely on explosive bursts or a single strategy. Instead, he layered his attack, mixing wrestling pressure with strikes, forcing Du Plessis to defend every moment while never giving him a chance to breathe. Cormier noted how Chimaev looked more prepared than at any point in his career, and that's saying something, considering the long list of fighters he's already steamrolled. Every adjustment, every movement seemed perfectly calculated, as if he had scripted the fight in his head and was now playing it out in real time. For Du Plessis, the struggle wasn't just physical, it was mental. He looked like a man searching for answers that simply weren't there. As Rogan observed, it didn't matter who he had trained with beforehand. Clearly, no one in his camp could replicate the kind of ferocity Chimaev brought. Wrestling partners, striking coaches, none of it matched the storm he faced in the octagon. This gap left Du Plessis stuck in survival mode rather than mounting any kind of real offense. Every attempt to push back was smothered almost instantly. The bookies had predicted Chimaev as the clear favorite going into this fight, but very few expected him to deliver on that prediction in such dramatic fashion. He didn't just win, he crushed every doubt that lingered around him. There had been talk about his stamina, about whether he could keep up the same pace against someone as tough as Du Plessis. But by the end of the night, all those concerns evaporated. His gas tank looked endless, and his composure never wavered. Even after securing control, he didn't let emotions get the best of him. He stayed sharp, focused, and utterly ruthless. What makes this performance so terrifying for the rest of the division is how complete it was. Some fighters dominate with wrestling, but lack sharp striking. Others strike beautifully, but crumble under grappling pressure. Chimaev has shown he can do both at the highest level, and he does it while keeping a tempo that breaks opponents. Rogan described this as pure dominance, and it's hard to find a better phrase. Chimaev didn't give Du Plessis a moment of hope. He didn't give him space to adjust or recover. Every second was a reminder of how wide the gap really is between him and most of the division. For Du Plessis, this loss sends him back into a division full of sharks. His resume is still stacked with big names, and he has proven his toughness time and again. But as Cormier pointed out, when a division is being ruled by a fighter like Chimaev, the climb back to the top becomes brutal. It's not just about beating skilled strikers or durable contenders anymore. It's about finding a way to handle a man who looks like he can control any fight from start to finish. And right now, very few fighters seem equipped to do that. That being said, there are still interesting matchups waiting in the wings. Rogan highlighted how fighters like Rainier de Ridder could present unique challenges with their combination of ground grappling and striking tools. De Ridder's long knee strikes, his toughness, and his experience could create moments that test Chimaev in ways we haven't seen yet. But even then, the question remains, will those tools be enough to stop someone who refuses to take a step backward? If history tells us anything, Chimaev thrives against challenges that are supposed to slow him down. The knee strikes and combinations Rogan brought up serve as a reminder that the middleweight division isn't short on dangerous weapons. There are fighters with knockout power, slick jiu-jitsu, and years of experience inside the cage. But the issue isn't whether these fighters have skills, it's whether they can execute those skills under the storm of pressure Chimaev brings. Because once he closes the distance and drags opponents into his world, all those tools tend to fade away. Fighters become hesitant, their game plans unravel, and before long, they are caught in the same spiral Du Plessis experienced. One of the most striking parts of this fight was just how effortless Chimaev made it look. Dominance at this level usually comes with visible strain, moments where a fighter digs deep to maintain control, but Chimaev never appeared out of his depth. Even in transitions, he moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what was coming next. This is the type of performance that doesn't just make a fighter feared, it makes them respected as one of the most complete athletes in the sport. Cormier and Rogan both emphasized how this night felt different. They've seen Chimaev dominate before, but this was a version of him that seemed fully real. His preparation, his cardio, his striking, and his wrestling all blended together seamlessly. It was a statement to the division, to the fans, and to the critics. If anyone thought the hype around Chimaev was overblown, UFC 319 made sure those voices were silenced. The aftermath of this fight leaves intriguing questions about the future. Who can realistically challenge Chimaev? Can a seasoned striker catch him off guard before he closes the distance? Can a world-class grappler neutralize his wrestling? Or has the UFC entered an era where one man is simply ahead of everyone else? These are the debates already stirring among fans, and analysts like Rogan and Cormier are just as curious to see what unfolds next. Du Plessis, despite the loss, will still be part of those conversations. His toughness and resume guarantee he isn't going anywhere, but it's clear that the division has shifted. Every fighter now has to measure themselves not against the former champions, but against the standard Chimaev has set. That standard isn't just about winning fights, it's about breaking opponents mentally and physically before the final bell even rings. Looking back at the fight, it's easy to say Du Plessis should have wrestled more, should have prepared differently, or should have brought in higher level grappling partners. But in reality, even with all those adjustments, it's difficult to see how much would have changed. Chimaev's pace and pressure are things you can't truly prepare for until you've been trapped under them, and once you've been there, the fight is already slipping away. That's why Rogan's reaction resonated so much. He wasn't just impressed, he was stunned at how complete the domination looked. For analysts who have watched thousands of fights, to be taken aback like that speaks volumes. This wasn't just another contender rising, this was the moment a fighter stamped his authority on an entire division. The UFC has always thrived on uncertainty, on the idea that any fighter on any night can shock the world. But when someone like Chimaev performs like this, that uncertainty starts to fade. He looks less like a man waiting for his shot and more like the man everyone else has to figure out. And if they can't figure him out, the division could be locked down for years to come. So as fans replay the fight, as highlights circulate online, and as debates rage on podcasts and forums, one thing is crystal clear. UFC 319 wasn't just a fight night, it was a statement night. Chimaev walked in with questions around him and walked out with answers so definitive that even legends of the sport like Cormier and Rogan had no choice but to acknowledge the gap. Whether you're a fan of Du Plessis, a supporter of Chimaev, or simply a lover of MMA, what happened in that cage was unforgettable. And as the echoes of his dominance continue to ripple through the division, everyone is left wondering the same thing. Who on earth can stop Khamzat Chimaev now?